The email arrived on a gray Monday morning, and Yates Crawford's first instinct was to delete it, assuming it was spam or some elaborate hoax designed to prey on his recent grief. But something made him pause, his finger hovering over the mouse as he scanned the message again, the words swimming before his eyes until they crystallized into a reality he could not ignore. Your brother, Marcus Crawford, listed you as next of kin. There is a child. Please contact our office immediately. Yates leaned back in his leather chair, the skyline of Seattle stretching out behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows that usually made him feel powerful and in control. Today, they made him feel exposed. Marcus had been dead for 6 weeks, killed in a car accident on a rain-slicked highway 3 hours outside the city. The funeral had been small, attended by fewer people than Yates had expected, which only reinforced how little he had known about his older brother's life in recent years. They had drifted apart after their parents died, each dealing with loss in their own way. Marcus had become restless, moving from city to city, job to job, never settling down. Yates had thrown himself into building his real estate development company from the ground up, working 18-hour days, until Crawford Properties became one of the most successful firms in the Pacific Northwest. He read the email a third time, noting the signature at the bottom. Sarah Alvarez, licensed social worker, Child Protective Services. A phone number followed. Yates grabbed his cell phone before he could second-guess himself, his heart hammering against his ribs as the line rang once, twice, 3 times. This is Sarah Alvarez. The voice was professional but warm, carrying a hint of something Yates could not quite place. Compassion, maybe, or exhaustion. This is Yates Crawford. I received an email about my brother Marcus, about a child. There was a pause and Yates heard papers shuffling. Mr. Crawford, thank you for calling. I know this must come as a shock. Can you meet me this afternoon? I think this conversation would be better in person. 2 hours later, Yates found himself in a small, cramped office in a building that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. The woman who greeted him was not what he expected. Sarah Alvarez was younger than her professional tone had suggested, probably around his own age of 32, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and brown eyes that seemed to take in everything about him in a single glance. She wore a simple blue blouse and black pants, practical and unpretentious, and when she shook his hand, her grip was firm and confident. Please sit down, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her cluttered desk. I know this is overwhelming. You could say that. Yates sat, feeling too large for the small chair, too out of place in his expensive suit among the metal filing cabinets and worn furniture. I did not even know Marcus had been seeing anyone, let alone that he had a child. Sarah opened a file folder, her expression carefully neutral. Your brother had a daughter 3 years ago. Her name is Emma. The mother, unfortunately, passed away from an overdose about 18 months ago. Marcus had been raising Emma on his own since then. The words hit Yates like a physical blow. A daughter. A 3-year-old niece he had never met, never even known existed. Why did not he tell me? I cannot answer that, Mr. Crawford. What I can tell you is that Emma is currently in foster care, and according to your brother's will, he named you as her guardian in the event of his death. Yates felt the walls closing in. Guardian, I cannot. I do not know anything about raising a child. I work 70 hours a week. I have never even changed a diaper. Sarah's expression softened slightly. I understand this is a lot to process. No one is expecting you to make a decision right now. But Emma is your niece, and she has already lost both of her parents. She deserves stability, a family connection if that is possible. Can I meet her? The words came out before Yates could stop them, surprising himself. Sarah studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I think that would be a good first step. But Mr. Crawford, I need you to understand something. Emma has been through significant trauma. She is only 3 years old, and her entire world has been turned upside down multiple times. If you meet her, you cannot just disappear. Children remember, even at that age." "I understand." Yates was not sure he did, but he knew he needed to meet this child, this piece of Marcus that still existed in the world. The foster home was in a quiet neighborhood, a modest house with a swing set in the backyard visible through a chain-link fence. Sarah led Yates inside, where a middle-aged woman with kind eyes greeted them warmly. Emma was in the living room, playing with blocks on a worn carpet. When Yates saw her, his breath caught in his throat. She had Marcus's eyes, that same shade of green that their mother had passed down, and there was something in the set of her small jaw that reminded him of family photos from when he and Marcus were children. "Emma, sweetie, someone is here to meet you," the foster mother said gently. The little girl looked up, her expression wary. She was tiny, with dark curls and a purple shirt that seemed too big for her small frame. She did not smile, just watched Yates with those familiar green eyes that seemed far too solemn for a 3-year-old. Yates knelt down, feeling awkward and uncertain. "Hi, Emma. My name is Yates. I was your daddy's brother." Emma tilted her head, studying him. "You look like my daddy," she said quietly. The words pierced something in Yates's chest, a grief he had been holding at bay since Marcus's death. "Yeah, I guess I do. We were brothers." "Where is my daddy?" Yates glanced up at Sarah, who gave him an encouraging nod. He had no idea how to explain death to a 3-year-old, but he tried. "Your daddy had to go away, sweetie, but he loved you very much." Emma was silent for a moment, then returned her attention to her blocks, stacking them carefully. Yates stayed there on the floor, watching her play, seeing pieces of his brother in every gesture and expression. After a while, Emma handed him a block, a small gesture that felt monumental. In the car afterward, Sarah was quiet, letting Yates process. Finally, he spoke. "What happens if I do not take her?" She would stay in foster care. "We would try to find her a permanent placement, hopefully an adoptive family. But Mr. Crawford, the system is overwhelmed. Emma might move from home to home for years. And she would lose her connection to her biological family completely." Yates drove back to his office, his mind spinning. He thought about his penthouse apartment with its minimalist furniture and expensive art, about his demanding schedule and the business deals that required his constant attention. How could he possibly fit a traumatized 3-year-old into that life? But he also thought about Emma's green eyes, about the way she had handed him that block, a tiny gesture of trust. He thought about Marcus, about all the ways they had failed each other as brothers, about the distance that had grown between them. Maybe this was a chance to do something right, to honor the brother he had lost. That evening, Yates called Sarah's cell phone. She answered on the second ring, her voice tired. "Mr. Crawford, I want to do this," he said. "I want to take Emma, but I am going to need help. I have no idea what I am doing." He could hear the smile in her voice. "That is what I am here for. We will take this one step at a time." The next 3 weeks were the most challenging of Yates's life, and he had built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. There were home visits and background checks, mountains of paperwork, and meetings with lawyers. Through it all, Sarah was his constant guide, patiently explaining the process, answering his endless questions and helping him prepare his apartment for a child. She accompanied him to purchase a bed and toys, standing in the middle of a children's furniture store as he stared helplessly at rows of cartoon-themed bedding. "What does a 3-year-old girl even like?" he asked, feeling completely out of his depth. Sarah picked up a comforter with stars and moons on it. "This is nice. Not too babyish, but still whimsical, and we should get some stuffed animals, books, and art supplies. Emma needs things that make her feel safe and give her ways to express herself." Yates followed her recommendations, filling a cart with items he never imagined owning. At the checkout, Sarah caught him staring at the total on the register. "Second thoughts?" she asked quietly. "No, just thinking about how much my life is about to change." "Change is not always bad, Mr. Crawford." "Yates," he corrected. "If you are going to help me navigate this, you should probably call me Yates." She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes and transformed her entire face. "All right, Yates, and you can keep calling me Sarah." As they loaded the purchases into his car, Yates found himself studying her profile. She had been nothing but professional, but there was something about her that drew him in. Maybe it was the way she spoke about Emma with such genuine concern, or the patient way she dealt with his anxieties. Or maybe it was simply that she seemed to see past the CEO exterior to the confused, grieving man underneath. Emma moved in on a rainy Friday afternoon. Sarah brought her, along with 2 small bags that contained everything the little girl owned. Yates had taken the day off work, something he rarely did, and he opened the door to find Emma clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide and uncertain. "Hey, Emma," he said, trying to sound cheerful and confident. "Welcome home." Emma did not respond, just pressed closer to Sarah's leg. Sarah knelt down beside her. "Remember what we talked about. Yates is your uncle, and you are going to stay with him now. He has a room all set up for you with toys and books." "Can you stay?" Emma asked Sarah, her voice small. "I will stay for a little while to help you get settled," Sarah promised. "But Yates is going to take good care of you." The first hours were awkward and tentative. Emma explored her new room with cautious curiosity, touching the toys and books but not really playing. Sarah helped Yates navigate dinner, suggesting simple foods that a 3-year-old would eat, and then bath time and bedtime routines. By the time Emma was finally asleep in her new bed, clutching her rabbit, Yates felt utterly exhausted. Sarah gathered her things, preparing to leave. At the door, she paused. "You did well today. I know it does not feel like it, but you did." "Stay," Yates said suddenly. "I mean, have a drink or something. You have been dealing with my panic all day. Let me at least offer you a glass of wine." Sarah hesitated, professional boundaries clearly warring with something else. Finally, she set her bag down. "1 glass." They sat on his balcony, the city lights spreading out below them, and Yates poured 2 glasses of red wine. For a while, they just sat in comfortable silence. Then Sarah spoke. "Can I ask you something? Why did you decide to take Emma? You could have said no. A lot of people in your position would have." Yates considered the question. "Because she is family. And because I spent too many years letting my relationship with Marcus fall apart. I cannot fix that now, but maybe I can do right by his daughter. Maybe I can give her the stability and love that Marcus would have wanted for her." Sarah nodded slowly. "That is a good reason. Emma is lucky to have you. I am not so sure about that yet. I barely know how to take care of myself, let alone a traumatized toddler. You will learn, and I will help you. That is my job." But as the evening wore on, and they talked about everything from their childhoods to their favorite movies, it felt like more than just a professional relationship. There was an ease between them, a connection that Yates had not felt with anyone in a long time. Sarah told him about growing up in a large family, the youngest of 5 children, and how that had led her to social work. Yates talked about building his company, about the pressure and the loneliness that came with success. When Sarah finally left, well past midnight, Yates stood at his window and watched the taillights of her car disappear into the night. Something had shifted, though he could not quite name it. He checked on Emma one more time before going to bed, finding her fast asleep, her small chest rising and falling steadily. She looked peaceful, and Yates felt a surge of protectiveness so strong it surprised him. The next few weeks established a new rhythm. Yates hired a nanny to help during work hours, a competent older woman named Mrs. Chen who had raised 4 children of her own. But he made sure to be home for dinner every night, to be there for bath time and bedtime stories. Emma remained quiet and withdrawn, rarely speaking unless spoken to, and she had nightmares that left her crying out for her father in the dark. Those nights, Yates would go to her room and hold her until she fell back asleep, feeling helpless and heartbroken. Sarah came by twice a week for check-ins, monitoring Emma's adjustment and offering guidance. But increasingly, her visits stretched longer. She would stay for dinner, helping Emma eat her vegetables, or she would linger after Emma went to bed, talking with Yates about the challenges and small victories. Emma began to warm to Sarah in a way she had not with anyone else, seeking her out for hugs and showing her pictures she had drawn. One evening, about 6 weeks after Emma had moved in, Sarah arrived to find chaos. Emma had thrown a massive tantrum at daycare, hitting another child and refusing to calm down. Mrs. Chen had called Yates in the middle of an important meeting, and he had rushed home to find his niece red-faced and screaming. By the time Sarah arrived for her scheduled visit, Yates was sitting on the floor outside Emma's room, his head in his hands. "Rough day?" Sarah asked gently, sitting down beside him. "She will not stop crying. I have tried everything. I do not know what I am doing wrong." Sarah knocked softly on Emma's door, then opened it. "Emma, sweetie, it is Sarah. Can I come in?" The crying quieted slightly. Sarah disappeared into the room, closing the door behind her. Yates could hear her voice, soft and soothing, though he could not make out the words. After about 20 minutes, the door opened and Sarah emerged with Emma in her arms, the little girl's face blotchy and tear-stained. "Emma wants to tell you something," Sarah said quietly, setting Emma down. Emma looked at the floor, her small hands twisting together. "I am sorry I was bad." Yates knelt down. "You were not bad, sweetheart. You were having big feelings. Can you tell me what made you so upset?" "The other kids have mamas and daddas," Emma whispered. "I want my daddy." The words broke Yates's heart. He pulled Emma into his arms, holding her tight. "I know you do, baby. I miss him too. Your daddy was my brother, and I loved him very much." Emma cried into his shoulder, real sobs that shook her small body. Yates held her through it, his own eyes burning with unshed tears. When she finally calmed down, exhausted, he carried her to bed and stayed with her until she fell asleep. In the living room, Sarah was making tea in his kitchen as if she belonged there. She handed him a mug and they sat on the couch, close together. "That was intense," Yates said. "Grief is intense, especially for children. Emma has been holding a lot inside. Today was a breakthrough, actually. She is starting to process what happened. How do I help her through this? You do exactly what you just did. You hold her. You validate her feelings. You show up day after day. That is all any of us can do." Yates set down his mug and looked at Sarah, really looked at her. She had been his lifeline through all of this, the person who made him believe he could actually be a father figure to Emma. But somewhere along the way, she had become more than that. He looked forward to her visits, found excuses to text her with questions that he probably already knew the answers to. He liked the way she laughed, the way she was endlessly patient with Emma, the way she seemed to understand him without judgment. "Sarah," he started, then stopped, unsure how to continue. She met his eyes and something passed between them, unspoken but undeniable. "Yates, I should tell you something. My visits here have become less about case management and more about, I look forward to seeing you, both of you. And that is a problem, professionally speaking. Why is it a problem? Because I am supposed to be objective. I am supposed to evaluate whether Emma is in the right placement, and I cannot do that if I have personal feelings involved. What kind of personal feelings? Yates asked, moving closer. Sarah bit her lip, a gesture that Yates found endearing. The kind where I think about you when I am not here, where I find excuses to extend my visits, where I am starting to care about you and Emma as more than just a case file. Yates reached out and took her hand. I think about you too. All the time, actually. You have helped me become something I never thought I could be. And I know the timing is terrible and complicated, but I would really like to take you to dinner. A real date, not just talking on my couch after Emma goes to sleep. Sarah squeezed his hand. I want that too, but we need to be careful. Emma needs stability right now, and she is attached to both of us. We cannot mess this up. Then we will not mess it up. We will take this slow, make sure Emma is always the priority. Their first official date was 2 weeks later, after Sarah had formally transferred Emma's case to another social worker to avoid any conflict of interest. They went to a small Italian restaurant, and Yates could not remember the last time he had felt so nervous. Sarah wore a green dress that brought out the warmth in her brown eyes, and when she smiled at him across the candlelit table, Yates felt something click into place inside him. They talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing easily. Sarah told him about her worst cases, the children she had not been able to save, and how she carried them with her. Yates talked about the pressure of running a company, about making decisions that affected hundreds of employees, about the loneliness at the top. But they also laughed, discovering shared tastes in music and books, debating the merits of various Seattle coffee shops. Walking Sarah to her car afterward, Yates took her hand. I had a really good time tonight. Me too, Sarah said softly. Yates leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she did not. Their first kiss was gentle and sweet, a promise of something more. When they pulled apart, Sarah was smiling. We should do this again, Yates said. Definitely. Over the next few months, Yates's life transformed in ways he never could have imagined. Emma slowly came out of her shell, her nightmares becoming less frequent. She started preschool and made friends, bringing home artwork that Yates proudly displayed on his refrigerator. She began calling him Uncle Yates, and sometimes, in sleepy moments, just Uncle, and each time felt like a gift. Sarah became a regular presence in their lives, joining them for weekend outings to the zoo and the aquarium. Emma adored her, and Yates found himself falling deeper with each passing day. Sarah fit into their life seamlessly, knowing exactly how to coax Emma out of a bad mood or make her giggle with silly voices. But she also challenged Yates, pushing him to be more present, to not let work consume him the way it had before. One Saturday afternoon, about 5 months after Emma had moved in, Yates took them both to Discovery Park. It was a perfect autumn day, the leaves turning gold and red, and Emma ran ahead on the trail, her laughter echoing through the trees. Sarah walked beside Yates, their hands linked. I have been thinking, Yates said, about the future, about what I want. What do you want? Sarah asked, looking up at him. This, you, Emma, a family. Sarah stopped walking, pulling him to a halt. Yates, are you saying what I think you are saying? I am saying that I love you, Sarah. I know we have not been together that long, but I have never been more sure of anything. You have changed my entire life. You brought Emma to me and then you stayed, and I do not want to imagine my life without you in it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. I love you too. I think I started falling for you that first day in my office when you looked so terrified and determined at the same time. Yates kissed her there on the trail, with Emma playing nearby and the autumn sun filtering through the trees, and it felt like everything in his life had been leading to this moment. That evening, after Emma was asleep, they sat on the couch and talked about the future. Sarah had been living in a small apartment across town, but more and more of her things had migrated to Yates's place. It felt natural when he asked her to move in to make their family official. "What will we tell Emma?" Sarah asked. "The truth. That I love you and you love me, and we both love her, and we are going to be a family." Emma took the news with the adaptability of a child. She was excited to have Sarah living with them, and she helped pick out which room would be Sarah's office. The transition was smooth, as if Sarah had always been meant to be there. 6 months after Sarah moved in, Yates proposed. He did it simply in their living room after Emma went to bed, with a ring he had spent weeks choosing. Sarah cried and said yes, and they held each other, marveling at how much their lives had changed. They planned a small wedding for the following spring in a garden overlooking Puget Sound. Emma would be their flower girl, a role she took very seriously, practicing her walk down the aisle with intense concentration. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Yates found himself thinking about Marcus often. He wished his brother could see what his daughter had become, could know that she was loved and safe. He wished Marcus could meet Sarah, could see how she had helped heal the grief that had threatened to consume them both. The night before the wedding, Yates stood in Emma's doorway watching her sleep. She was 5 now, growing so fast it sometimes took his breath away. She had Marcus's eyes and smile, but she was her own person too, curious and creative and full of life. Yates thought about that first day in Sarah's office, how terrified he had been, how certain he was that he could not do it. And now he could not imagine his life any other way. The wedding was perfect. Sarah was beautiful in a simple white dress, and Emma took her role very seriously, carefully scattering rose petals down the aisle. When Yates and Sarah exchanged vows, Emma stood between them, and they included her in the ceremony, promising to love and care for her always. At the reception, Yates gave a toast. 2 years ago, I got an email that changed my life. I learned I had a niece I never knew existed and that she needed me. I was terrified. I had no idea how to be a parent, how to give a traumatized child what she needed. But Sarah saw something in me that I did not see in myself. She believed I could do it, and she walked beside me every step of the way. She did not just help me become a father to Emma. She became family to both of us. Today is not just about Sarah and me getting married. It is about recognizing what we have already built together. A family, messy and imperfect and full of love. There was not a dry eye in the room. Emma came running up to hug his legs, and Sarah joined them, and they stood there together, the 3 of them, a family. A year later, Sarah was pregnant. They told Emma together, worried about how she would react to the news of a sibling. But Emma surprised them, as she often did. She was excited, already planning how she would teach the baby everything she knew. She talked to Sarah's growing belly, telling stories about her day at kindergarten and singing songs she learned in music class. Yates watched his wife bloom with pregnancy, and he felt a contentment he had never known was possible. Crawford Properties continued to thrive under his leadership, but work was no longer his entire life. He made it home for family dinners, attended Emma's school performances, and spent weekends building a crib and painting the nursery with Emma's enthusiastic help. Their son was born on a snowy December evening, a healthy baby boy they named Marcus, after the brother who had brought them all together. Emma was enchanted with her baby brother, wanting to help with everything. Yates held his newborn son and felt the weight of gratitude and responsibility, thinking about the journey that had led him here. One evening, when Marcus was about 3 months old, and Emma was at a sleepover with a friend, Yates and Sarah finally had a quiet moment together. They sat on the couch, baby Marcus asleep in Sarah's arms, and just breathed. "Can you believe this is our life?" Sarah asked softly. "Sometimes I think about that day you called me, how nervous you sounded. I never imagined we would end up here." "I think about that day too," Yates admitted. "I think about how close I came to just deleting that email. If I had, I would have missed all of this. Emma, you, Marcus, everything that matters. Your brother would be proud of you, of how you stepped up for Emma, of the father you have become." Yates looked at his son, at his wife, at the life they had built together. "I hope so. I like to think he knew somehow that I would take care of her, that I would not let her down." "You have not let anyone down. You have done exactly the opposite." 2 years later, they bought a house with a big backyard, leaving the penthouse apartment behind. Emma was thriving in second grade, excelling in art and making friends easily. Marcus was a rambunctious toddler, getting into everything and keeping them constantly on their toes. Sarah had transitioned to a supervisory role at Child Protective Services, training new social workers and advocating for policy changes. Yates still ran Crawford Properties, but he had learned to delegate, to trust his team, to not let work consume him. He coached Emma's soccer team, taught Marcus to kick a ball, and made sure to tell Sarah he loved her every single day. On Emma's 8th birthday, they had a party in their backyard, filled with her friends and their families. Watching Emma blow out her candles, surrounded by people who loved her, Yates felt Sarah slip her hand into his. "She is happy," Sarah whispered. "She is," Yates agreed. "We all are." That night, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Yates and Sarah cleaned up together, working in comfortable synchronization. They had a rhythm now, a partnership built on love and mutual respect and shared purpose. "I got another email today," Yates said as he tied up a garbage bag, "from a lawyer handling estates, another situation like Emma's, a child who needs a home." Sarah looked at him, understanding in her eyes. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that we have a lot of love in this house. I am thinking about how Emma changed my life, how you changed my life. I am thinking that maybe we could do it again." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Tell me more about this child." They talked late into the night, discussing possibilities and logistics, the impact on Emma and Marcus, what they could reasonably handle. It was not a decision to make lightly, but the seed had been planted. 3 months later, they welcomed 7-year-old Lily into their home, a quiet girl with dark eyes who had lost her parents in a house fire. Emma took her under her wing immediately, showing her around their house and sharing her toys. Marcus, now almost 3, was curious about his new sister, following her around and chattering constantly. The adjustment was not always easy. Lily had nightmares, just as Emma had, and she struggled with trust. But Yates and Sarah had learned a lot in the years since Emma had first come to live with them. They knew how to be patient, how to create safety and stability, how to love a traumatized child back to wholeness. One evening, about 6 months after Lily moved in, Yates was sitting on the back porch, watching his 3 children play in the yard. Emma was teaching Lily and Marcus a clapping game, all 3 of them laughing. Sarah came out and sat beside him, handing him a beer. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How none of this was in my plan," Yates said. 5 years ago I was married to my work. I thought success was measured in deals closed and properties developed. I thought I had everything figured out. And now I know I did not have anything figured out. This right here is success. This is what matters." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "We have built something pretty amazing." "We have," Yates agreed, "and we did it together." The years continued to unfold, filled with the beautiful chaos of raising 3 children. Emma grew into a confident teenager, still artistic, talking about studying architecture in college. Lily blossomed, finding her voice and her passion for writing. Marcus was pure energy and joy, keeping everyone on their toes. Crawford properties continued to grow, but Yates made sure to prioritize differently now. He turned down projects that would require extensive travel. He involved Sarah in major decisions, valuing her perspective on how his work impacted their family. He established a foundation to help children in foster care, working closely with the agency that had brought Emma into his life. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yates took Sarah back to the garden where they had gotten married. The children were with Sarah's parents for the weekend, giving them rare time alone. 10 years, Sarah said, looking out at the water. It has gone so fast. Best 10 years of my life, Yates said, pulling her close. You know, I never believed in fate or destiny. I thought success came from hard work and strategy. But meeting you, Emma coming into my life, it all feels like it was meant to happen. Maybe it was, Sarah said. Maybe Marcus knew exactly what he was doing when he named you as Emma's guardian. Maybe he knew you needed her as much as she needed you, and that she would bring me to you. They kissed as the sun set over the water, the same view they had seen on their wedding day, a reminder of promises made and kept. Years later, when Emma graduated from college with a degree in architecture, she gave a speech at the family dinner celebrating her accomplishment. I do not remember much about my dad, she said, her voice steady. I was so young when he died. But I know he loved me because he made sure I would be taken care of. He gave me to Uncle Yates, and Uncle Yates gave me everything. A home, a family, stability, love. And he found Sarah, who became the mom I needed. They gave me siblings, a life I never could have imagined. Everything good in my life comes from the family we built together. There were tears around the table, happy tears, grateful tears. Yates looked at his daughter because that was what Emma was, his daughter in every way that mattered, and felt overwhelming pride. That night, alone with Sarah in their bedroom, Yates reflected on the journey. Do you remember that first day in your office? You told me Emma deserved stability and a family connection. I remember, you looked like you were going to bolt at any second. I almost did, Yates admitted. I was so scared, but you made me believe I could do it. You did it yourself. I just helped you see what was already there. No, Yates said firmly. We did it together. Every step of the way we have been partners, in parenting, in building our family, in everything. I could not have done any of this without you. Sarah kissed him softly. I love you, Yates Crawford. I loved you when you were a terrified CEO who did not know the first thing about raising a child. I loved you when you sat on the floor and let Emma cry on your shoulder. I loved you when you proposed expanding our family to include Lily. I love you now, watching you be an amazing father to 3 incredible kids, and I will love you always. Always, Yates echoed, holding his wife close. That is exactly how long I plan to love you too. Outside their window, the Seattle skyline glittered, the same view Yates had had from his old penthouse. But everything else had changed. That lonely CEO who had lived for his work was gone, replaced by a husband and father who understood what really mattered. A family built not on biology alone, but on choice and commitment and love. Marcus would never know the family his daughter had found, never see the man his brother had become. But Yates liked to think that somehow, wherever Marcus was, he knew. He knew that Emma was loved and safe and thriving. He knew that his death had brought together 2 people who were meant to find each other. He knew that his daughter called Yates Dad now, and Sarah Mom, and that she had siblings and stability and every opportunity to build a beautiful life. The journey that had started with an unexpected email had led Yates to everything he never knew he needed. It had transformed him from a workaholic bachelor into a devoted husband and father. It had brought Sarah into his life, a woman whose compassion and strength had helped him become the man he was meant to be. And it had given them Emma, and then Marcus, and then Lily, 3 children who had needed a family and had, in turn, made them a family. On quiet evenings, when the children were finally asleep and the house was peaceful, Yates would sometimes sit on the back porch and think about the twists of fate that had brought him here. A brother's death, a social worker's email, a scared little girl with green eyes. Each moment had been difficult in its own way, each decision fraught with uncertainty. But each step had led him closer to this life, this family, this profound sense of belonging and purpose. Sarah would often join him in those quiet moments, curling up beside him on the porch swing they had installed. They did not always talk. Sometimes they just sat together, comfortable in the silence, watching the stars come out over their backyard where their children played and grew and dreamed their own dreams. No regrets, Sarah would sometimes ask, a question born not of insecurity but of wonder at how far they had come. Not a single one, Yates would always answer, and he meant it with everything in him. Their love story had not started in a conventional way. There had been no chance meeting at a coffee shop, no awkward first date, no simple falling into each other's arms. Instead, their story had been built on a foundation of grief and responsibility, on a shared commitment to a child who had lost everything. But from that difficult beginning had grown something beautiful and lasting, a partnership, a marriage. A family that was chosen and built with intention and fierce, protective love. Emma, Lily, and Marcus grew up knowing they were wanted, knowing they were loved unconditionally. They saw in their parents a model of what commitment looked like, what partnership meant, how love could heal even the deepest wounds. And they carried that knowledge forward into their own lives, into their own relationships, spreading the impact of the family Yates and Sarah had built far beyond their own home. As Yates and Sarah grew older together, watching their children become adults, starting families of their own, they never lost sight of where they had started. That email on a gray Monday morning, that small office where they first met. That scared little girl who had needed a home and had given them so much more than they had ever given her. On their 25th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, Yates raised a glass to toast his wife. 25 years ago, I married my best friend, my partner, the love of my life. But our story started before that, in a moment of grief and uncertainty, when a social worker with kind eyes told a terrified CEO that a little girl needed him. Sarah, you did not just help me become a father to Emma. You helped me become the man I was always meant to be. You showed me what love looks like, what family means, what truly matters in this life. Everything I am, everything we have built, it all starts with you. The room erupted in applause, but Yates only had eyes for Sarah, who was crying happy tears. She stood and kissed him, and in that moment, surrounded by the family they had built from loss and love, Yates knew that his life had turned out exactly as it was meant to. The path had not been easy, but it had been worth every difficult step. Because sometimes, in the midst of grief and uncertainty, when everything feels like it is falling apart, life sends exactly what you need. For Yates, it had been an email about a child. For Emma, it had been an uncle who chose to step up. For Sarah, it had been a chance to help create the family she had always dreamed of. And together, they had built something that transcended their individual stories, creating a legacy of love that would endure for generations. The young CEO, who had once measured his worth in properties and profits, had learned the only metric that really mattered. Love given and received, family chosen and cherished. Lives changed for the better because someone decided to show up, to stay, to commit to the hard and beautiful work of building something that would last.